I'm a disappointment to my family. It seems like no matter what I do, I'll always stand alone as the single biggest failure of the entire family. Generations of bloodlines and genes all mixing and passing down, all to be wasted on me. At least I have my comfort game.
That's basically what Security Breach was. It's the equivalent of the so-called prodigy child that had every resource, every chance, every privileged opportunity to succeed, only to end up wasting all of its potential. Following the success of Help Wanted, Steelwool Studios had proven themselves to be a worthy company when handling the FNAF franchise. Sure, there were a few rough edges here and there, but overall, they seemed to have a good handle on this fudgy teddy bear. They had everything they needed: an already successful franchise, a passionate fanbase, and the silent nod of approval. So once they began work on their next project, the fanbase excitedly waited, and waited, and waited, and waited. Okay, to be fair, hindsight is 2020. Waiting 2 years for a game to be released isn't exactly the worst development hell ever. I think the main problem came from the game being announced way too early in development, as well as setting up a vague release date. Not to mention, FNAF fans are used to having to wait for a game to be released. They grew accustomed to yearly releases, so this was just blasphemy. But hey, the game finally releases in December, and yeah, you already know the story from there. There's no point in building up to it.
Wow.
God! Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no!
The game sucked, and it sucked so badly. We can only ponder on what went so horribly wrong during development that led to giving birth to this atrocity of a game. Steelwool didn't just screw over Freddy, it violated him. Security Breach has left a permanent stain on the FNAF franchise. This game was the front and center introduction to a wider AAA audience of a relatively niche indie title. This is the game that completely threw the story and lore out the window. This is the game that disillusioned so many fans of the series. It caused even the most hardcore fans to take a step back and say,
Yeah, that wasn't that good.
and listen, while I don't think it started the downward spiral of indie horror games, it definitely didn't do it any favors.
Suffice to say, Steelwool had the Herculean task of redeeming themselves and Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh god, that's so much pressure. Quick, think. So what's something that everyone can get excited about? Something that no one can get mad about. Something that can soften their judgmental receptors so they don't treat us so harshly. I like my idea better.
Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin. Wow, that's a mouthful. Announced in May of 2022, Ruin is free DLC that follows up on the story and the many hanging threads of Security Breach. Also, can I just say how hilarious it is that they named it Ruin? I can't tell if it was intentional or not, but they are lampshading hard on the state of the game. How bold of them to establish a vague release date again, because we all know how well that worked out last time. But to their credit, they did end up releasing it on the promised year, so good job, Steelwool. Really taking big strides over here. Though I don't understand why they didn't just make Ruin a completely separate free game instead of tacking it onto Security Breach. I guess they were trying to heal all the wounds? I don't know, it's a weird choice. Regardless, there was a lot of anticipation riding on Ruin. How will Scott and Steelwool respond to all the criticism? Will Ruin address and fix all the story and gameplay problems left behind by Security Breach? What will even happen in this DLC? I personally had so many writing expectations that 8 months ago, I decided to make a wishlist video where I go over what I want to see in Ruin. Video is in the description below, by the way. So while this video will be a review on Ruin, it also acts as a sort of pseudo sequel to that previous video. I'll be pointing out what was and wasn't fulfilled along the way. It feels like it's been an eternity. We were left in the dark for most of the road to Ruin, with Security Breach's looming presence over the franchise. Ruin was our shining light down the dark hallway. Scott once said that he used FNAF World as a lesson, to not take the fanbase for granted.
What I learned from FNAF World is what is driving every single project going on right now. It is serving as the gemstone of quality control in my mind, and it has solidified exactly what I have to do going forward. It just served as a really important lesson for me that you should never take, it taught me to never take for granted
Yeah.
how special it is to have a group of people who are eager to play what you make.
So, did he learn another lesson? Will this be the Ruin redemption? or the Ruin rejection. 1 year, 2 months later, after a single trailer, Ruin is here. Let's find out. We start things off with the introduction of our new protagonist, Cassie. I guess she dyed her hair during the year-long development. We were called here by Gregory, who sent Cassie a message to meet us here. Yet he's nowhere to be found. So already we have a clear premise to the start of our journey as opposed to Security Breach, in which we pretty much get nothing as to why Gregory is even there. I can appreciate the visual storytelling here. Notice how bright it is outside. We're leaving the nice, safe light and entering a dark and decrepit building. The familiar Pizzaplex is in shambles, crumbling apart, and obviously in ruins. Throughout the entire DLC, the mall feels like it's barely holding itself together, and I freaking love it. I guess I just have a niche for broken down industrial-like buildings. It reminds me of Portal 2, and anything that reminds me of Portal 2 gets a soft spot in my heart. Either that or it's my cardiomyopathy. There's an ominous tone and a feeling of uncertainty as you make your way through the entrance. Even the flashlight that you find flickers and dims a bit before fully turning on. You don't feel like you're in danger, but you definitely don't feel safe either. So immediately Ruin has fulfilled one of my wishes, to make the game darker, both tonally and visually. The aesthetic is fantastic. Seeing as how the place is broken down, it forces the lighting to be far more limited. No more brightly lit rooms or overbearing neon signs. Instead we get a barely functioning flashlight and walls of graffiti and sludge. I love it. Speaking of flashlights, we get our first major scare from this staff out holding one. Not only is he our first jump scare, but he also serves as a way to kinda throw shade at Security Breach, because to our delight, staff bots are completely absent in Ruin. This is basically the only one still functional, and it gave me a bigger scare than any other staff bots in Security Breach. This absolute Chad scared the shit out of me, dropped a flashlight, shut down, and refused to elaborate, while completely destroying the gameplay of Security Breach. I had my complaints about these staff bots, about how they were everywhere, and how they were delegated to be an annoying obstacle more than anything, while simultaneously killing the atmosphere. They didn't kill you, but teleported someone who could over to you. This staff bot tried the usual shtick of sounding the alarm before dying out, hinting towards the non-existent role they play in Ruin. We get a few more jump scares as we make our way into the Ruin facility, like a falling tool cart, a falling elevator shaft, and a falling vent shaft. Jesus, with all this falling, the only thing left is to fall in love. Oh god, I take it back, or actually... Nah, that's a long shot. Sorry I didn't see you there, Chica. I was kinda distracted by this shrieking bird toy over here. Why does this desk toy need to have such thick thighs? In all seriousness, Chica looks amazing. I adore these new animatronic designs, which we'll get to see more of later. She looks just a tad bit different from her original teaser design, but it blends perfectly with the new scarier tone of Ruin. Because yeah, Ruin is already way scarier than Security Breach ever could be. There are a few too many stingers and jump scares than I would have liked, but I'd be lying if I said most of them didn't get me. Above all else, the atmosphere excels at delivering an uneasy and eerie feeling. This time you do not have a constant voice going, "Gregory, are you there? Gregory, Gregory, please, Gregory, are you there? Gregory, I have chlamydia, Gregory." You're left alone with just your thoughts. No comforting voice to keep you going. Just your soul thrive to find your friend. Though I will say that the beginning is when the horror shines the most. The air of mystery is amazing, and the lack of any obvious threats sells the tension far better than the rest of the game. I'm not saying that the rest isn't scary, but it starts to fizzle out once things really start to get going. Which isn't inherently Ruin's fault, it's only natural that you get more comfortable in the place you spend a lot of time in. But the introductions of the new mechanics don't really help the problem either. We soon find a Roxy-themed walkie-talkie. A Roxy-talkie? And finally hear a familiar voice. Gregory. He informs us that he's trapped underneath Roxy's raceway and needs us to rescue him. Huh. I guess the help me in the teasers was a cry for help. Cassie reluctantly trenches forward, with her Roxy-talkie in hand. I know I just praised the game for not having a companion talking in your voice, but luckily Gregory doesn't overstay his welcome. He isn't constantly talking and joking around like Freddy. He only speaks when it seems relevant to progress the game and story forward. Another item added to our equipment is a fast wrench that we use to open these locked doors, with a pretty easy puzzle minigame. They get a little harder later down the line, but I never felt like I needed to actually use my brain to solve them. Interestingly, the items in our inventory now get a little description blurb on them, often on Cassie's thoughts of said items. I like this little addition. It always felt like the collectibles in Security Breach were pretty arbitrary, only really serving for an ending. This gives me a little more incentive to collect them. And who knows, we might even get some lore hits. Like, apparently Roxy is Cassie's favorite. and apparently This wrench is used by all Fazbear technicians. This oversized toy is used by professionals to keep this place together. No wonder it's in such terrible condition. I love the implication that Fazbear Entertainment has the need to slap their brand on everything they touch, including their workers' tools. Anyway, we continue forward and get one of my favorite jump scares in the game. That got me pretty good. Cassie struggling underwater gives way to a title card.
Huh? What's this? Oh, it says here, being sued by James A. Janice for stealing his bit. Huh? Oh. Looks like I'm also being sued by Zoran for stealing his bit.
Amazing introduction, by the way. Ruin basically put its crotch in my face and was like, yeah, this ain't security breach, brother. We arrive at Monty's Golf. The Forest Cafe wannabe definitely feels familiar, but I can't quite figure out where exactly we are. That's the thing with Ruin. It takes familiar places and twists them in on themselves. You feel like you recognize these locations, but because everything is so trashed and disorienting, you can't quite pin down the exact location. It'd be interesting to see if anyone does a comparison showcasing the massive differences in rooms. As we make our way through Monty's Golf, we're introduced to an old friend.
Free mask.
That's right, it's Vanny. Yes, more Vanny, let's go. Hopefully we see more of her later. I like how they brought back her old mask from Help Wanted, since in my opinion, it has a much better design than her current one. Actually, is that even considered a mask? It's more like a helmet, no? Oh yeah, MaskBot is also here. But Chris, didn't you say there won't be any more staff bots? Oh, you thought I was lying? This isn't a staff bot, it's MaskBot. Completely different trademarks. Not to be confused with MatBot, of course. This one has bunny ears. Anyway, the mask they give us is actually one of our most important pieces of equipment. It's called a security mask. Huh, look at this, it's all high-tech and stuff. Once we put it on, our whole world changes. Welcome to Vanny Network. Huh? This is so bizarre. So basically, it's an augmented reality visor. It lets us see these wire nodes, collect AR collectibles, and lets us pass through objects. Hold on, what? We're freaking altering reality with this thing. How does any of this work? It's so weird. FNAF has taken some wild turns before, but this is straight up magic. Everything turns all purpley and cody. My vocabulary is amazing. I kind of like it, but at the same time, I'm kind of skeptical about it. To me, this mask took away a lot of the horror aspect. It's a bit too sci-fi for me. Too fantastical, you know? I mean, it looks cool. I like the vibes it gives me. And sometimes you can hear distant voices, which is also cool. But it brightens everything up, it brings back the bright neon lights, and on top of that, the animatronics seem to ignore you with it on. It definitely grew on me, but I still wish it wasn't so prolific in the gameplay. I guess it's really up to you and how much you want to use it. Well, I wish it was a little more limited. Like maybe have it disabled in some areas to focus more on the horror? I don't know. But to help us wrap our head around this new technology, we have Helpy. He'll act as our guide to small tasks because he can't even appear when the mask is off. Holy crap, Fazbear Entertainment is literally burning Helpy into our retinas. What's next, burning pizza coupons? I will say though, I love how there's an in-universe explanation for this new UI. Speaking of which, is massively improved for this DLC. The crouching symbol is way smaller, pressing E is slightly faster, and gone are the very intrusive instruction cards that took up the whole screen, paused the gameplay, and were hand-holding you every step of the way. Instead, we have Helpy, explaining things in a much smaller, digestible box that goes away on its own. There are a few cards at the beginning, but at least they explain some very crucial information. So overall, a massive improvement over the original. Since we're talking about improvements, I should also mention that your flashlight no longer requires recharging. It kinda just stays on all night. I guess the StaffBot's flashlight have a better battery life than the customer versions. And most importantly, no more save spot stations. Yes! One of the most unpopular features in Security Breach has been replaced with autosaves, so you just play the game normally and let them do the saving for you. I wonder if the Smash devices serve as a form of lampshading.
Yeah, we hated them too.
Back to this mask. We'll talk about the lore implications later, but it basically makes up most of the gameplay in Ruin. If you see pixelated area, it's either a blockage you can pass through or a security node. These guys block off passages and your progression, so you have to deactivate these rabbit heads by following the red wires and disabling whatever red objects they're connected to. And I do mean whatever. There's a goddamn pixel you need to disable at one point. Once you disable all the child nodes, you're free to disable the main head by solving another little puzzle. This one is at least a little trickier and profusely gets a little more complicated, but they weren't too bad either. At least they weren't until they introduced this guy. Oh god no. Yeah, this guy is an unexpected entity. He lurks in the mask world and will haunt the player if they keep it on for too long. If you don't leave AR mode quickly, then he'll call an animatronic over to end your run. Alright, okay, this is good. This is a good compromise to my problem with the AR world. We were too safe with the mask on, with no actual threat. The entity added a dash of anxiety whenever we put it on. You essentially have a time limit of how long you're allowed to have it on. This guy constantly has me rushing and panicking to take it off before he appears. I enjoy its addition, but there are still some small criticisms. He's a bit too generous. He makes a noise to let you know he spawned and gives you time to take off the mask, so he doesn't immediately call someone over. I'm sure most people actually like this little warning, but I would have preferred if he had a tighter deadline just to keep me on my toes more. But then there's also the problem that to keep him from spawning, you need to take off your mask. So you're constantly taking it off and on over and over to keep him at bay. I guess it's not a huge problem. It keeps the gameplay a little trickier, I guess. Overall, he's a good addition, and I love his design. Look at that creepy fellow. So yeah, my mask dilemma was quickly solved, especially since later down the line, they even introduced sections where you can't put it on. Just what I wanted. They're small and fleeting, but appreciated nonetheless. Along the way to help us are camera stations. At first, you may remember the fast watch and the camera that came with it. It was laggy, confusing, and somewhat useless. But as usual, Ruin came in and improved pretty much everything about the camera system. First of all, you don't have it on you 24/7, so you can only use the cameras when they want you to. This in turn means that you only use them when you actually need them. And in Ruin, they have an actual function. You can use the intercom to lure enemies away from you, freeing up space. And certain cameras introduce yet another weird concept. You need to look for symbols and quarantine these so-called anomalies in order to shift the fabric of reality to proceed. That was a visual representation of your brain. Okay, I have no words. I don't know how any of this works, so I'm not even going to try to make sense of it. I will say though that this mechanic gives way to amazing opportunities for tension. Since some cameras can only be accessed by wearing the mask, the anomaly has you finicking around desperately looking for the symbols in order to progress and take off the mask. There's also a secret hidden feature, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, there we have it. In terms of gameplay, the mask really comes in as not only the foundation, but as the load-bearing beams. The rest of the game is basically you repeating these notions while putting you in different environments and slightly different gameplay scenarios. Admittedly, the gameplay starts to get a little repetitive and even boring near the end. I mean, there's only so many digital rabbit heads I can hack into before I yearn for something different. But Ruin keeps things somewhat fresh with the settings and story interactions. Ruin has a very tightly knit progression. Unlike Security Breach, it doesn't try to trick you with the half-assed illusions of choice. There's always a clear path, only one way forward. It's a linear experience, much more scripted. There's a clear objective, you're not running around a giant mall aimlessly anymore. Since the gameplay has more control over the player, the horror is elevated. It has a better chance to resonate with you.
Resin.
This DLC is split into chapters, with each one taking place in vaguely familiar locations, while also dealing with vaguely familiar characters. And let me tell you, these character designs are so freaking raw. They look incredible, barely qualifying as recognizable, but I just love how tarnished and wrecked they are. In my Ruin video, I went over how I love the shattered designs, and how I wish they were used in darker areas to really sell how scary they could be. Well, my prayers were answered, because that's pretty much what we got in Ruin. Monty in particular gets the most action, seeing as how he pretty much chases you through half of the game. He's constantly on the prowl and even goes full alligator and crawls around underwater looking for you. Chica admittedly doesn't get too much to do. She really only has one area to herself and is pretty easy to avoid. Roxy, on the other hand, she finally got her time to shine in the spotlight, since she's delegated to a more sympathetic role this time around, but more on that later. So really, these guys aren't super active, definitely not roaming around every corner like in Security Breach. And there's actually a simple reason for that. No more hide and seek. The hiding mechanic is completely absent in Ruin, opting for a more conventional way to avoid these guys. While they can't really see you with the mask on, they can still touch, which means they can still kill you. This is a vastly preferred way to play Ruin. The hiding always felt miserable in Security Breach, since you're just sitting around waiting for them to leave you the hell alone. Seriously, why did they take so long? Most of us opted to just run away from them, so this was definitely the right move. The story progression is rather simple. Gregory is stuck under Roxy's raceway and tells Cassie she needs to disable all of security in order to rescue him. So most of our progression is us making our way to Roxy Raceway. Simple enough. Our journey takes us to the daycare where an old friend has been waiting for us. Alright! Sun and Moon once again look incredible. The visible inner teeth, the glowing eyeballs, he's so cool. The dynamic and struggle for control is really entertaining, considering their exaggerated personalities. Poor Sun is begging to get the lights back on. And also, why does the line I am trapped in a gap go so hard? It's such a silly line, but given the context and delivery, I can't help but love it. And oh yeah, I forgot you could fly. That's so cool. So we go around the daycare, turning on generators to get rid of Moon, who doesn't like flying. Luckily, this time there's a clear path of progression. So I'm not going in circles looking for a generator I already pulled like last time. Sadly, Sun and Moon take a backseat role this time around. He mostly just stands in one place, talking every once in a while. I guess they didn't want to have a rehashing of the original. It's fine, I guess. This part goes by somewhat quickly as we finally reboot the attendant, thus reviving Eclipse?
Happy birthday!
Whoa, it's like merging the both of them. His voice is so soothing. Much to our dismay, this is the last we see of them. Oh well, it was nice while it lasted. Now I can see why so many people were snipping for this Sun and Cheese bastard. Outside the daycares are a bunch of oh god knows waiting for us. The Glamendos have an interesting mechanic with the mask. They can't see you, so they just wander around. Okay, maybe not that interesting, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Once you go into the theater and put on your mask, you can actually see Gregory on the screen, running away from sorry, I just get excited when I see her, cause where is she? Anyway, you go on the cameras and quarantine the anomalies and whoa! Okay, now that's cool. That's really cool. It's very reminiscent of Dreadbear from Help Wanted, if anyone remembers that. Animatronic Vor. Okay, it's pretty funny how Cassie panics here. Very childlike, not seeing the obvious answer. We fall onto a gator chair ride thing and have a fun little sequence showcasing Monty's history. Then we almost die. And hey, we recognize this place. It's where we had that Monty battle. You go around disabling more nodes and teleporting through glowing doors. Alright. I'm done trying to process these things. And yeah, this part is a bit too long. You kind of just chug along, not really worrying about any threat. I mean, you could fall, but it's not much of a challenge avoiding that. Monty makes a brief appearance, but never attacks you. This part was honestly kind of boring. I would have preferred if Monty was lurking around attacking you, or maybe the target's more difficult to hit. Whatever. We move along in the digital rectum, and Gregory apparently disables the entity. Oh no. Come on, the one guy posing a threat in the R world and you get rid of him? Boo. Luckily it only lasts for a second, since he quickly drops by with a new mechanic, the inhibitor. This little thing will either keep you from putting the mask on, or keep you from taking it off until you disable it. So two great opportunities for more panic-inducing scenarios. And then we enter the server room. Oh my god, what can I even say about this? The metaverse is taking over. The Matrix is falling apart. Any joke you can make, it's here. It's all here. I don't know what to say. But once again, we get this really great part where we have to escape before the entity gets us. It's great until you realize that he gives you too much time to escape. Seriously, he is no threat whatsoever. So the story has kind of taken over the script a bit. So let's skip over to Roxy with her insecurities ever present. I haven't mentioned it yet, but sometimes when you put on the mask, some very unsettling eyeballs appear. See, that's the thing with this mask. Even if I have my criticisms about it, it makes way for some really cool and creative scenarios, like the giant endo I mentioned earlier, or a giant can of hairspray blocking your path with a waterfall. Like, that's pretty cool. I wish I could have done more with this type of scenery. And in Roxy's, we actually get some backstory for Cassie. It's a little difficult to make out a story, but from what I can tell, looks like she really loves Roxy, which was already made kind of clear with the collectibles that she was her favorite. And seeing how the Monty soda machines changed to Roxy, there's a bit writing on this premise. But most interestingly, it looks like Gregory might have been her only friend? Dang, that puts a lot more weight to this journey. No wonder we're so persistent to save him. After a while, Roxy manages to catch us and...
Give me back my eyes!
Ah! Let go! Let go!
I'm sorry. Error.
Whoa, I don't know what I was expecting, but that was really wholesome the way Roxy apologized. So she's not inherently evil. Looks like she mostly has a vendetta against Gregory for stealing her eyes. Which, I mean, if someone stole my eyes, I'd be pretty pissed off too, so... Okay, now that we're here, all we have to do is... Disable more notes. This was what I was talking about with things getting repetitive. At this point, I was getting kind of tired of the notes, and the upcoming section did not help that notion. We head to Bonnie's bowling, and just like Monty's section, this goes on for way too long. The whole shtick is you need to lure these music men away in order to access the inhibitors, in order to access the notes. It's just too much back and forth and back and forth, and the music men are really finicky. I just couldn't lure them away from the area I needed to go. I'm not sure if it was bugged or I was just going too fast, but it wasn't very pleasant dealing with these guys. Instead, I wish they brought back the DJ Music Man. They even name drop him. In my Ruin video, I mentioned how cool it would have been to see him chase us around a ruined facility. I would have much rather preferred that over these little dingles. Though I will say, seeing them pass by right in front of me in the dark was kind of spoopy. And yes, I like their designs too. But yeah, this part was a chore to get through. Luckily, this next part was so much better. After going down what I can only assume is Glitchtrap's anus, we arrive in Phaser Blast, and whoa! It's the Princess Quest minigame. What is this? What does it mean? Why is there a sword? I actually didn't know what this meant at the time, but we'll get to what it probably means later. Cause for now, we have to frolic through the phaser tag maze. And eventually, we get to what is, in my opinion, the best part of Ruin.
Freddy! Freddy? Are you okay? You need to be functional.
Yes! Yeah! Fuck yeah, this part is awesome. It's so scary. It's legitimately terrifying hearing those booming footsteps as Freddy chases you. His amazing design, the race to turn off the inhibitor, oh my god. This Freddy chase section is peak FNAF. Seriously, best part of the game. In my Ruin video, I mentioned how it would have been cool if Freddy turned on us. It'd be like a twist of innocence. And oh man, did Ruin deliver. Our once closest ally has now been turned into our scariest threat. His chest cavity, one of the safest places to be in Security Breach, is now a jagged razor-sharp mouth. It harkens back to Nightmare Fredbear's design in FNAF 4. And his missing head is the cherry on top, a completely expressionless, silent animal. There is no comfort here whatsoever. Also, I missed this the first time, but he has Prototype written on his foot. Interesting. And we hardly get a break from the action, because as soon as we escape into the event, a little classic music man starts chasing us. They're just throwing everything at us now. So we just need one more note, and Gregory informs us where it is. And when we find her, well...
Roxy.
Cassie. Cassie. Welcome back, Cassie.
You remember me?
Why is this so sad? When I first saw this and heard the music start to play, I was like, oh, who's gonna feel bad about this part? But god damn it, someone must be cutting onions, because this is actually really sad. Even more so when you remember Roxy is Cassie's favorite animatronic. We see her in a whole different light than with Gregory. And god damn it, man, why did they have to animate her with such sad looking eyes? I know, Cassie, I'm crying too, but we made it this far, so there's no turning back now. We go down yet another familiar location, and after wandering a bit, it's Candy Cadet! Look at you, buddy, really moving up in the world. So I haven't mentioned it, but earlier I found an old vintage coin, and found more down here. So obviously, they expect us to use them for something if they're giving us so many. And yeah, you use them on Candy Cadet and hear one of his stories. He tells a story of a monster that was locked in the basement by a mother and her child. He couldn't escape, so one night he listened as the mother sang a lullaby to her kid. He eventually learned the lullaby and tricked the kid into freeing him. Huh. Okay, I think I know where this is going, but let's move on. Finally, we reach Gregory, and all that's left to do is shut down the security system, and at last, we come face to face with our old friend.
You saved me! You saved me. Gregory? I'm Gregory. You're not Gregory. What are you?
I'm Gregory.
Whoa! You're like Roxy to the rescue. Where did you come from? While Roxy battles us out, the real Gregory starts talking to us. We've been tricked, bamboozled, played like a damn fiddle. This thing lured us down here to free it. Oh my god. It's a twist I kinda saw coming. Gregory always sounded kinda weird over the Roxy talkie. And it would have been a weird choice to make him a badass in Security Breach, but a weak little deer in ruins staring at headlights. But now he's here to help us escape from this thing, which, let's not beat around the bush, I'm going to call the Mimic. He mentions that he has access to maps from a certain friend, and so begins the chase. And again, just like Freddy's segment, tensions are at an all-time. There's like 4 A's, I guess. Tensions are at an all-time high. The thundering footsteps getting closer is terrifying. But I will say that the end of the chase scene was kind of fumbled a bit. If you wanted us to go right to this closed door, then why would you have a brightly lit, open doorway right in the center of our field of vision? What the heck, Ruin? You were doing so well. Anyway, we have one final door puzzle. As the Mimic closes in on us, we narrowly escape into an elevator. Oh god, Jesus. What's wrong, buddy? Need a hand? Alright, Gregory, just pull us up and...
But we can't risk being followed. I'm sorry.
Gregory? No!
Wow. The ultimate betrayal. After we risk our lives multiple times to save you, Gregory just cuts the cord and drops us to our death. Wow. As the screen goes black, we get an option to skip? What? Why would I want to skip a cutscene? That was pretty stupid. Anyway, after all, we roll credits.
What?
No. Are you kidding me? That's how it ends? I feel so empty.
Okay, there's a lot to digest here. So drink up those laxatives because we're going in. First of all, our new villain, the Mimic. He is no longer Afton. Yes! Burn in hell, old man! In all seriousness, even if it's still not 100% confirmed, I'm so happy that Afton isn't coming back this time. If you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about, I don't blame you. Our new villain was actually introduced in the Pixelplex book series, so most of his story comes from there. I don't like that. If this is the Mimic, which I'm 90% sure it is, then he should have been introduced in Security Breach. I typically don't really care if we get answers from reading the books, but if the backstory to your new villain rides on them, that's just poor storytelling. That's poor management. That's not how you tell a story. You shouldn't rely on outside media to fill in major story gaps. This isn't a story, it's a soap opera. I'm willing to give Ruin the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe this is his introduction and we'll get an expanded story later down the line. So, just looking at the games, what does that leave us with? Well, we know that he's able to imitate Gregory's voice. That much was obvious. We don't hear him speak as anyone else, but I think it's a safe assumption that he can replicate other voices as well. And we also have Candy Cadet's story, which pretty much just tells his story. There's also one more thing, but we'll talk about it later. But yeah, that's pretty much it for now. The Mimic has a lot of potential to be an interesting new antagonist. I mean, the moment he was introduced in the books, he almost instantly became a fan favorite. He should have absolutely been introduced in Security Breach, but better late than never, I guess. But if this isn't his introduction, then yeah, this is bad, man. It is just bad. It's like taking a bite out of a sandwich, but realizing you forgot the fillings and adding them later. It's messy as hell, but I guess you're eventually satisfied.
Rare.
And no, I don't count Burntrap as his introduction. Whether or not he's supposed to be Burntrap is still unclear to me, seeing as how different his endoskeleton is designed. Speaking of which, I like how it looks more retro and blocky than the other endoskeletons. It hints towards him being an older animatronic. But hey, if it is Burntrap, yay, my theory was right. And you've probably noticed that the blob is completely absent. Not much for me to say about that. I did hope he and Afton would take a backseat in my Ruin video, so that's another win for me, baby. But it came at a price. Despite all the material based around her, our sweet rabbit lady is missing too. Neither Vanny or Vanessa is present in the game. Damn it, man, my number one wish, and it's one of the only ones that doesn't come true. And based on a few lore hints, it looks like she'll never get a chance to truly shine as Vanny. It's a shame, but hey.
You win some, you lose some.
The reason why I believe she won't come back is because I'm pretty sure this takes place after the Princess Quest ending. Yeah, I think most of us assumed that the Burntrap ending was all but canon, me included, because it was the only one where the building is actively crumbling down. But seeing as this sword that was used by the princess is stabbing into the arcade machine that was seemingly holding her under control, I think it's hinting towards her ending where she's freed. And also, Freddy's design is reminiscent of how fucked up he got during that ending, as well as missing his head after Gregory took it. Yeah, I think it's safe to assume this is the canon ending. And I'm aware that Freddy has prototype written on his foot, which definitely wasn't there before. But who knows, maybe it was written afterwards or something, I don't know. Him being a prototype might explain why he wasn't taking over at the beginning. But yeah, as bummed as I am that Vanny won't be getting any more action, I'll gladly take that sacrifice if it means we got ruined. The last two things to mention on my wishlist is polish and story. I'm happy to say that this game was definitely ready to be released this time. There were a few small bugs here and there, but I only had one game-breaking glitch. It was during this Roxy section when my mouse got stuck for some reason. But yeah, at least there's no more floating moon jump scare. Real big precedent to have your game finished, I know. But now it's time for the big meat. The story. Because I found out a little later that there are multiple endings. Hell yeah, maybe one of these will fill the void in my heart. I complained in my previous video that there was no clear story or takeaway in Security Breach, and that too much of it relied on the confusing lore. Luckily, Ruin is a bit clearer with its intentions. The Mimic is trapped underground and tricks you into turning off the security, which I guess in a weird way was the good guy? Gregory comes in last second to save you, but ends up making a hard decision to leave you behind, to make sure it doesn't escape with you. It's a little vague with what's going on with him, but for the most part, I'm satisfied with what they gave us. But the different endings throw some weird concepts at you, per usual. The first one is simple to get. When you're being chased down by the Mimic, take a left right before these green mushrooms. And you find this really well hidden cutout of Fredbear. Put on your mask and this happens.
Kathy, I'm okay. I found a spot to hide.
I don't know.
This ending is almost scary to me with how bizarre and out of nowhere it is. There's just too many questions. What is going on? Why does Vanessa have eyeshadow? Is this the real Gregory talking to us? Where's Freddy? Is Cassie going to be okay? Like seriously, her panic breathing freaks me the f out for some reason. I don't know how to explain it, this ending just makes me so uncomfortable. Okay, let's break down what's going on here. So this pretty much confirms that the PQ ending is canon, seeing as how Vanessa is here. Gregory found a place to hide. Helpy is here, I guess as a stand-in for Freddy? And yeah, I don't know what this ending means. Vanessa kinda looks a little sinister back here to me. Maybe she was the friend that Gregory mentioned? I have nothing. It's just too weird for me. Why do we see this when you put on the Vanny mask in front of a Fredbear cutout? I can't wrap my hand around it. This means something, I just don't know what! I really don't know what to make of this ending. There's one more ending, and unlocking it is a little more tricky. Remember when I was ranting about this open doorway? Turns out it actually does have a purpose. When you access the camera system, you have the option to zoom out the map, and sometimes you'll find these secret camera options with strange bars on them. Click on them and this door will slowly open. This completely went over my head when I first played this. I just thought that maybe those cameras were too far for the visuals to pick up or something like that. I honestly had no idea what these things meant, so I didn't give it much thought. But what they did was actually open the pathway to a new ending. That's why this door was open. I almost accidentally unlocked the secret ending, but I actually missed one camera, so I had to go back and find it. The camera was well hidden because it's during a chase sequence, but I finally got access to the final ending. You'll know when you have access to it when the Mimic puts on an animal suit. Oh my god. This might actually take the cake for the creepiest thing in FNAF history. He looks disgusting. I have never felt so disturbed in my life. I love it. So you do the usual chase, and this time we have all the doors unlocked. We enter a room that resembles vague memories. We push a button, and as we stare lovingly into the Mimic's eyes, a mechanical arm scoops him up, and after a little struggle, leaves him on the floor, lifeless. Okay, so this is a little clear. This seems to be some sort of new and improved scooper, and it, well, scooped the Mimic. And that's all I can infer from this ending. I don't know why this is here, I don't know who built it, and I don't know why he needed to wear a costume for this.
Well, the first ending left me empty. Now, I'm empty and confused. Just like an Easter egg, but when you open it instead of chocolate, it's your life savings.
I pretty much threw all of my ideas about what these endings could mean, so there's not much left for me to discuss. FNAF endings have always felt really vague and up for interpretation. But I think the difference with Security Breach is that they always feel like they're setting up for a sequel, and that includes the DLC. All three endings feel like they end really abruptly. No cinematic or long-winded denouement or anything, just a simple implication from Roxy that Cassie might have survived. It's really up to you on how you feel about that. I've reluctantly come around to the ambiguity of the endings, though I still think they're really frustrating. Like, don't be scared to have an ending to your story. If you want to make sequels, that's fine, but like, Don't make it a soap opera. Something I've neglected to mention are these comic drawings by Gregory you can find. They all depict various endings from Security Breach, except for Princess Quest. I guess it's a fun nod to it being canon, and Gregory just drew what-if scenarios. That may explain some of the weirder choices and inconsistencies in these endings. A few last miscellaneous things I would like to mention. Now that we know that Vanessa's free, that pretty much confirms that she's Vanny, right? So because we use her mask and a system named after her, I can only assume she's somewhere really high in the company hierarchy, and she's twisting her evil persona to help make up for her past actions? Maybe that's why the mixture system is a rabbit. She's besmirching Afton's name by making it a protector. That's a pretty cool concept if that's the case. Also, I'm sure you've noticed by now, but the character animations have vastly improved since Security Breach. They're far more smoother and more cinematic than the original. Just take a look at the jump scares. Poor Cassie is fighting for her life. That's so messed up, I love it. While they don't hit the Security Breach cutscene highs, they consistently stay in good quality. The humor has also been toned down significantly. There's still the typical dark humor here and there that FNAF is known for, but far more subdued as to not take away from the darker tone.
And with that, I think we're finally done with Ruin. So, the question remains, is it better than Security Breach? Do dogs piss?
I know I've been comparing Ruin to Security Breach a lot. It's kinda impossible not to when they made it what is essentially an extension to it. I've tried not to let the Snyder Cut effect cloud my judgment of Ruin, so I can properly critique it. So, looking at it as its own thing, without Security Breach in mind, it's no question to me that Ruin is still amazing. I have my problems with it, but I think what it did right really exceeded my expectations. The horror and atmosphere is great. Even with the introduction of the mask, it still found small ways to scare the player. The chase scenes with your limited sprint, the grotesque character designs, the complete panic in the AR world. I've ragged on the AR portions of the game already, but I think it's important to call out just how weird it is. I think the visuals are great, they look cool, very memorable, but I just can't help but feel like teleporting and creating entire rooms? It just feels like a concept from another game. I don't know what direction they'll take the AR world, but it's gonna take a bit for me to say, oh yeah, that's FNAF right there. We'll just have to wait and see. There's not much to say about the sound design. It's great, but nothing really special. Though some parts do have distorted music playing, which is a little chilling. And I've already mentioned the weird noises you hear in the mask world. And the little secrets like Chica's voice box or Bonnie's dead corpse hiding in Bonnie's bowling. You need to disable a bunch of wet floor signs, which makes sense that you can do considering you have tools used by technicians. And of course, Roxy's little hero arc. She was always a fan favorite, so putting her in a new light was probably the best choice they could have done. Though I am left wishing they developed her a little bit more. But yeah, Roxy is best girl, big surprise. Even if Chica's a big contender considering her new dress. Don't mind me, I'm just gonna pass. God damn. Overall, Ruin was so good. If this is where the future of FNAF is heading, then I think it has a pretty bright future ahead. Or dark for that matter.
Ruin isn't perfect, I've had my complaints about it. But it did so much right. It brought back the horror, it introduced a new villain, and most of all, it got me excited again for Five Nights at Freddy's. So I'm very much looking forward to Help Wanted 2, which was announced shortly after Ruin was. Which was shortly announced after the FNAF trailer. I wonder if they were compensating for anything. So, Steel Wool, Scott, well done. But Vanessa still doesn't have her rainbow streak. Did you learn nothing?